I told my kids I wouldn't be nervous tonight, but I think I lied. I would first like to thank the Honorable Mayor, Kelly Yade, for allowing me to be at this amazing event this evening. Thank you so much for your transparency and spending time with me over the last year almost, talking about this problem that we're having with addiction. Thanks to the Senator, thank you so much for being here this evening. And thank you to, I want to pronounce your last name right, Mr. Onifry, right? Angelo, for allowing me to be here today. So I've been working on that all night long, and I still almost got it wrong. Thanks to Jeff. I look forward to seeing the Honorable Mayor Jackson. We're going to be having some lunch, I think, coming up here soon. Thank you so much, sir. And thanks to the community and all the loved ones and the families that are here this evening. You know, I'm always about being transparent. And it feels really good to be here with these honorable people here who are representing our community and know that they're not blowing smoke up your butt. They literally are affected just the way we are with our loved ones who've passed on and our loved ones who are suffering right now from an addiction. And I'm here just to share my story, just a small story like we all have. I'm originally from Trenton, New Jersey. I found my way to Tucson, Arizona as follows. My father used to run the streets here in New Jersey. He ran numbers, he was a gang banger, he was using, running, chasing. And he ended up having to go before the courts. And back then, that you had a choice whether to join the service or to look at a long time going to jail. My father opted for the service. So he was stationed in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, out in Tucson, Arizona. Out there, he had a chance to finally, after a couple of years, to get off the base and go out. He went to a James Brown concert. You guys remember James Brown, right? So he went to this James Brown concert, and he saw a young lady sitting behind a window in this car, and back then he tapped on the window and she had to roll it down like this. That's when they had the car windows like that. So he introduces himself to her and says, "Hi, my name is Eugene," and she says, "My name is Imogene." And she said, "Why aren't you in the party at the James Brown concert?" And she said, "Well, I'm only 15 years old, and so my boyfriend's in there and he left me out here." So my father stood out there and talked to this young lady for about 3 hours. After a while, he started to go out to visit this 15-year-old in Marana, Arizona, where she was out picking cotton for a living. Then when she was a sophomore in high school, my dad decided to go to her high school, walk across the gym floor, and propose to her at 15 and a half years old. And she said, "I'll marry you, but I have to ask my daddy." So they went out to the cotton gin yard and asked my grandfather to marry my mother, and he got out of the service, he missed the draft, and he ended up coming back to New Jersey, Trenton, where he brought this now 16-year-old, almost 16 and a half years old. And I was born right here in Trenton, right in Mercer Hospital. The only thing is, when my father came back to New Jersey, he started to do the same things he did when he was growing up in Jersey. He started to run the streets again, running numbers again, running out with his friends, using, drinking, chasing women. The other thing he started to do was put his hands on my mother. My mom, being only, 16 and a half, almost 17 years old, decided to leave my father, so she went to Arizona with myself. Told my dad, "If you wanted us, you're going to have to come out to Arizona." So he went out to Arizona, he picked my mom up, brought me back, and came back to New Jersey. The domestic issues continued to happen. So she now is pregnant. She has a daughter, my sister, Tammy. We ended up leaving for the last time because my mother said, "We just can't be around this craziness, this alcohol, the drugs, the chasing, the using." And so she took us back to Arizona. Said, "If you want to be with me and these kids, you got to come out to Arizona and spend a lifetime with us out here." So my dad went back to Arizona. Now I'm old enough to start to witness kind of the things that are happening around the house, and I see my mother being abused. I always see my mother in the bedroom on her knees crying and praying. She's always going to church, and I see a father who's running the streets. I smell the weed on his breath. I smell the alcohol, and I see him coming home late at night, and he's still putting his hands on my mother. And now I'm starting to really be affected as a child because this is what I grew up in and around. I would see a mother with her eyes black, and we'd be riding in a car, and I see her get hit in the mouth, and I see blood splat against the windshield. And I didn't know how I was supposed to cope with this as a child, so I started to just run a lot. In fact, we'd visit Trenton every year. We'd come back, and I'd be out racing with my cousins, and we'd race up and down these parks against people, and I was really fast, and I'd race for a quarter a race. I won a lot of quarters. And unfortunately, when we lost, my cousins wouldn't pay, so we had to run back home. Well, The domestic violence didn't stop, and the use didn't stop, and the chasing didn't stop, and then smelling the alcohol on my dad's breath, and the going out into the streets looking for my father, and my mother going into the bars, and me, myself, going in there and starting fights with other women, and just the chaos and the craziness, and not being able to cope as a child. I just wanted to get away from this craziness. The last thing I wanted to do was be like my father growing up. In sports, I saw these elementary school teachers and junior high school teachers and high school teachers start to take me under their wings because they knew there were some dynamics happening at home that somehow this kid who has all this ability, we just have to kind of take him under our wing and let him be able to get that energy out doing something different. And I knew that there was no way with these drugs and this alcohol and the craziness and the running the streets that I was ever going to be like that when I grew up. Just no way. It was hard to be like a mother, too, who I always saw on her knees praying and crying out to this God, just wondering, when is this God going to show up? Now, I believe, because I went to church with my mother and my father. My dad would show up, in the holidays and Thanksgiving and Easter. Always when there was a funeral, he went to church. Now, I'm not here to knock my father. This is just the beginning of the story.
Say, can you see?